before I understood boundaries around food. I cannot even tell you how many Januaries were spent on my knees crying out to the Lord, like, this is the year that it's going to be different. This is the year I'm going to lose weight. This is the year I'm going to get control over my food. And every year, when I at some point inevitably failed that goal, the piles of shame that were heaped on top of me felt overwhelming. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to 2021. New to my channel, I am a food addict in recovery for about 3.5 years, and through that process of surrendering that entire area of my life to the Lord and walking in freedom and recovery, I have lost over 100 pounds, about 115, kind of give or take, right? We've been in COVID and quarantine, and so like anybody, that number fluctuates. More than the weight that I've lost, I have learned what it means to live a life fully surrendered to the authority of the Lord. It can be really easy to, well, maybe not really easy, but it's easier, I think, to give God the big things of our life. Like, I have this job decision to make. I have this move to make. I want to know what my calling is, right? Like the big overarching life goals, we can give those to the Lord. But the little everyday ones, the what am I going to eat today? What am I going to say today? How am I going to interact with my kids today or my coworkers today? Like those decisions, we tend to want to keep those ones. And so learning to give God authority in everything is hard, but it brings so much fruit and so much freedom, because ultimately that's the way we were designed to live. God gives us the freedom to live. Like I think about it like bumpers on a bowling lane, right? God gives us the bumpers. He tells us, here's where the boundaries are. Run within that. Do what you want. You have free will. I'm giving it to you. But if we don't choose to acknowledge that the bumpers exist, or to even look up to ask the Lord, what are the bumpers in my life? Then all of a sudden you're bowling 4 lanes over and you feel out of control, because you are out of control, but you don't even know that you got out of control because you never stopped to even realize that you needed bumpers to begin with, right? Like there is incredible amount of freedom when you know where the boundary lines are. And it can feel so counterintuitive to say, I'm gonna put those boundary lines up and that they're actually gonna give me freedom. Another way that I like to think about it is like being in this huge field, but knowing that there's a cliff somewhere. And if you don't know that there is a fence around the field, it could be 100-acre field. Somewhere there is a cliff. And if you know that there is a fence around that field that's gonna keep you from going off the cliff, how much more joyous and free do you feel to run with abandon all over that field than if you knew there was a cliff and you knew there was no fence? You might run wild, but there's always going to be this little bit of trepidation, this little bit of anxiety of like, oh, can I really run? Because maybe I'll fall off the cliff, because I don't know exactly where the cliff is in this field, and I don't know where there is no boundary. There is nothing that's going to keep me safe. Boundaries help keep us safe, and the Lord gives those to us. So as I have learned to walk in the boundaried life, I have experienced so much freedom. So let's go back to this idea of goals and resolutions, right? You start off excited. Maybe this is where you're at this year. You're starting off the year excited. This is going to be the new year. We all thought 2020 was going to be it, but let's be real. 2021, here we go, right? This is the year I'm going to get healthy. And you're excited and you're ready, but you also know what's happened in years past. And I want to tell you that this year can be different for you, because, and I've said it in other videos, and I will say it again, and I will say it always, self-control is a fruit of the Spirit. It is not a fruit of you. When I first heard that in recovery, it changed my life. Because every year, you know what happened in that January prayer, that January goal setting, was this is the year I'm gonna get control. This is the year I'm gonna lose weight. This is the year I'm gonna do something different. This is the year And what has been different about walking in recovery, walking in surrender to the Lord, is that when I make goals, when I set intentions for the year, like I did this year, it's about being open-handed. It still can be, this is the year right? I have a health goal for this year. which has come out of quarantine. We'll talk about that in a second. But really it's about, this is the year that I realign with you. This is the year that I surrender this area of my life. This is the year that I choose you over me. And that's what makes the difference. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And shame doesn't bring freedom. Shame brings bondage and shackles and isolation. There's a difference between shame and conviction. And perhaps this year you are feeling convicted over some of your habits. That may be eating habits, it may be social media habits, it may be patterns of speaking and interacting with people. We all have gravitated towards probably some unhealthier habits in this last year. We've been living in a global pandemic. Life has been turned upside down, and we are grasping for control, and we're grasping for some semblance of comfort, and we go back to the things that make us feel comfortable. And a lot of times those are unhealthy things. So whatever that unhealthy thing has looked like for you this year, let this year be a year that changes. I have come to recognize, being a food addict, right? Again, go back and watch some of my other videos. I'll try to link them so that they're easy for you to find, because I talk a lot more in those videos about my specific journey and what that has looked like, and you'll get more info. And there'll be more videos because this is part of my life. So this is what I talk about. In terms of kind of my particular journey, there is an actual like food plan that I follow. Those are my boundaries. There are specific non-negotiable foods that I don't eat. I don't eat anything with sugar or sweeteners. I don't eat anything with flour, any kind of flour or thickener like cornstarch and things like that. Those two food groups, flour and sugar, have a chemical thing in my brain. I have zero control. When those two foods are in my system, I don't have control. What I have control over is the first bite, so I choose not to put those foods in my mouth. And life is a lot better when I don't eat that way. I also have a kind of portion size that I stick to, because I also don't have an off button when it comes to eating. And so not only am I a food addict, but I am also an overeater. And if I don't kind of have a very specific, like, this is the amount of food that I know is right for my body, it doesn't really matter what I feel like, this is the amount that's right. I shouldn't eat more and I shouldn't eat less. That is really helpful to me. So practically speaking, there are some kind of boundaries that I live within. But then there's the whole other side of recovery that is your emotional state. The way that you think about food, the way that you think about your body, the way that emotionally you use food. And that's the part that, if I'm honest, I wouldn't say it went out the window, but it definitely took a back seat in the limousine. Like, it's way back there. Yeah. When I think back over this last year, like, I am incredibly grateful to the Lord in this whole journey that the actual food part has never really been that much of a challenge. Like, despite the fact that the world and my life and everybody's life kind of went into total chaos and a tailspin in this last year, I never had that urge. Let me buy some ice cream, let me like drown my sorrows in whatever. Like, jumping over the cliff in terms of my food stuff has never been a thing. But do I still have a tendency to go to food for comfort? Absolutely. I just choose to do it with foods that I know are not gonna drag me off a cliff, but they're definitely gonna keep me stuck in a hole. It's kind of like I'm running around in that field because I know where those boundaries are, but there's like this huge trap door, sinkhole, something. I don't really know the right analogy. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like, you fall into the hole, your foot gets stuck. You haven't like fallen all the way down, but you're definitely stuck. That is what being a food addict in quarantine was like for me. I knew I hadn't gone off the cliff, but I definitely let my foot get stuck. There are foods that I know are within my boundaries, but I can binge on. I know when I am eating those foods that I'm doing it out of boredom, that I'm doing it out of a desire to comfort or a desire to escape whatever is happening in my life. I'm feeling overwhelmed, and so I go to food. I'm bored, and so I go to food. I'm feeling out of control, and so I go to food. Like, that addictive mindset is still there. I remember somebody had asked me once, now that you've kind of gotten these specific foods under control, do you still feel like you would identify as an addict? Like, is addiction still a thing for you? And I was like, yes, absolutely. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't make me feel ashamed to identify that way. I understand that for some people that label can be really overwhelming. For me, it's just accurate. I am addicted to food. I have a tendency to go there, to use that as an unhealthy coping, and I can't stop myself. The end of the year and kind of reflecting on it and realize that I let myself get out of control. And I don't like that, because if it's just about don't eat these certain foods, then it's a diet. And that was never what made it successful for me. It was always the combination, the like, yes, do it this way practically because this is the way that the Lord has asked me to eat. Also, that my heart and my mind are surrendered to the Lord. That when I feel overwhelmed and out of control, that I go to Him and I don't go to food. Like, that is what made the difference. No, I know in my heart and my spirit that it's the combination of the two. That's why it worked. And I also know that I have let myself slide this last year. Now, there's grace for that. There is always grace for that. What is important in understanding grace, though, is that grace is not this like blanket thing to keep sliding, to keep doing the things that we know are unhealthy or the things that God is asking us to not do. Shame comes in when you start to slide, or maybe you've slidden all the way, or you're teetering off the edge of that cliff, or your foot is stuck in the hole, and shame comes in and wants to say, you got yourself stuck, you're at fault. You're never going to be able to get out, you might as well just stay stuck. Or you knew better. There is a place in our life for conviction, for the Holy Spirit to come in and say, I'm knocking, maybe you're off track. We need that. That's important. Don't let those moments of conviction become overtaken by shame. I cannot tell you how many Januaries I sat crying out to the Lord, but from a place of shame. God, I failed again. I made this resolution last year and I failed. Not only have I failed, but like I'm even heavier this year than I was last year. Probably many of us not in the place that we thought we would be. We probably are in a better place in some ways. I know for me this last year, like there are a lot of things that I am in a much better place than I ever would have imagined. But food addiction, that one was a bit of a struggle for me. And what I am committing to this year is to realign. Remembering, going back to those Ebenezer moments, remembering like this is what God did in my life. He freed me from feeling trapped and in bondage to my emotions, to my food choices, to all of those things, and He has brought me to a place of joy and peace and surrender. And that's what I want to continue to live in. I even begin to imagine what is going to unfold in 2021, but I want to walk into it from a place of confidence and a place of peace, that I am surrendering everything, my food, my emotions, my time, my words, my thoughts, everything. The Lord gets everything. It doesn't mean I cease to exist. I'm still me. I still have free will. I still have thoughts. I still have choice in all of this, but I'm realigning my recovery. Let this year be different. If you want to know more about food addiction and recovery, a couple of videos on my channel, watch those. Feel free to reach out. My contact information is in my bio. I am more than happy to chat about this. I know that it radically changed my life in many ways, not just losing weight, but gaining freedom. Good luck with whatever goals or intentions you're setting for the year.